Hello there. This is Ken Dickey, and I want to talk a little bit about having fun with morphs in Cuis Smalltalk. Now, morphs are, as we know, these graphic elements that happen to have behavior, and you can make them do interesting and fun things. But they're a little harder to use than I would like, and so I've been exploring ways to make them a little easier to use. And so I'd really like to get across three key ideas, making it easier to send messages to a particular morph, uh, how to do editing for visual properties in a little more sane fashion, and drag and drop of property values. So if we done a little work here, so if we go through here, we can, for example, open a message window to make it easy to send a message to a particular morph. Now, this morph essentially has an interior name which we don't know about, but we can make something sensible up. And so, say I can set the color to the color red, say. So this was actually an idea from Vio in Cuis Smalltalk, that you just, say I'm interested in sending messages to one particular morph, and this is just a regular, playground message window, and we can do anything we want here. So it just makes it just a little easier to do those sorts of things. Another thing is to have a visual properties menu. And visual properties menu, there are things that are visual properties, and if we go and click on a visual property, then we get an editor for that property. So we can go ahead and, let's see, maybe make this a bit larger. And say if I want to change the color, I can have a variety of things, get a particular color palette, or use a color mix editor. And let's go ahead and bring up a color palette. And then we can go ahead and select and drag a color. I'll just go for random here to the palette, and we just drag and drop editing from a palette to a property, which is pretty cool. And let's see, so I'll go back to my key points. The thing about editors for visual properties is by just simply annotating a property internally, which with things I call meta properties, allows those properties to bring up an appropriate editor, and they can share a lot of code to do that. And so one thing that's fun to do too is we can share values. Let's get a visual properties menu on this one, and so we can take a color here and drop it over here. Now you notice when I did that a little fast. When I dropped the color, there was a little green thing that came around. If I try to drop a color, say on morph extent, it's a little feedback that says, no, I can't do that. But if I drop a color on a color property, then everything is cool. So we can do fun things that way. The other thing is fun is, as I say, you click on something, you can either bring up a basic editor on, like a simple value, or you can do things like select an interesting font. And take that away, and then you see the font is indeed changed. And And if we go back here and hide this guy and bring up a palette for that with a visual properties menu, then we can go ahead and grab a font from here, and lo and behold, we can change things like fonts around pretty easily. And as you see, we can sometimes get a number of these menus around, and there's this little gear here, and if we click on a gear, then it puts the edit handles up around a particular morph you're talking about, so you always know that one particular morph is associated with one particular menu. Let's do something else here fun. We'll open a visual properties menu on this image morph, and let's see, yeah. So let's go ahead and change the image. Oops, I guess I should wait and, yeah, here we are. I'll take that and drop the image here. And so you see, you know, the basic idea is to take the walls away to make it easy to share state and do some of these fun things. Let me go back to my key points. So editors for visual properties, drag and drop properties, sending messages to morph easily. Another thing that one thinks about as after doing this a bit is construction menus. And if we go back to our, somewhere here, ellipse, one of the things we can do is show a drop target for the morph. Okay, so this is a drop target for the ellipse, and it's just a, you think of this as a construction lens. It's just a transparent lens that you put over. And the thing is, you don't really want to change the code for the morph, the structure of the code for the morph, in order to be able to play with it. But you'd like to be able to do constructing things. You need an intermediary, and so this drop target for this particular morph, which again, you see it's got a little gear here so we can bring up the construction handles. The construction lens for a morph allows you to drop things on it. And so, you know, we can do things like drop a color on here, and you know, and change the color and so forth. But let's also do something interesting in terms of behavior, because we can also do drag and drop behaviors. Let's see, new morph. So I'm going to go down to unknown morph modifier palette. So here's a palette which has things like colors, and we can go ahead, you know, do drag and drop a color and those sorts of things. The construction lens, but we can also change behaviors. So let's go ahead. Here we have a grow and shrink behavior, and so I drop this on here and click on the morph, and magically we can grow and shrink. So I've just added behavior to that morph. And if I take a look at the instance properties, you see what happened is we added some extra properties here, so it now handles the mouse down, and there's a closure on the mouse button up, which actually causes the behavior. And so we can also do things like add color cycling. Okay, now this is in this, when we put the mouse over the morph, suddenly we have color cycling. And if I am not on the morph, as in this case I'm over the drop target, then we see that we don't have that behavior. And if I do a refresh here, we see we've added again some more properties that allow us to do this sort of thing, which is kind of fun. And so the idea of having a palette, we could also add you know, specialized properties, and in this case we've added a value of kind of a point, kind, and that sort of thing. So the idea is we can go ahead and have construction palettes that allow us to add a lot of interesting features. And if I throw this away and then I come back and I say so drop target again for the morph, you see that, you know, unlike dropping colors, these behaviors are sticky because they're still there. And so if I take the palette away and then put it back, these properties, or the behaviors in this case, are still there. And so I'm just going to go ahead and do one more fun thing. And now we'll go ahead and we've got all kinds of fun eye candy things that we can do. And again, the three key ideas here are sending a message to a particular morph by clicking on it and saying, hey, let me send messages to that. Editors for visual properties where you click on something and you get an editor or a palette that you can select from. And the drag and drop of property values that can happen between there. Oh, let me show you one other thing before I close here. I can also do things like take colors. Let me grab color from here, and again, visual properties menu. I can grab a color and drop it on, say, a color editor, and that allows me to play with you know, various aspects of the color. So here's a color editor that then I can go ahead and do the usual sorts of things, and this is the actual color here, and the lower right is the closest web color. So I can take the closest web color and say I want exactly that web color, that's the closest web color, and I want to use that. And now I can go ahead and drag that back onto my original morph as a color property, and lo and behold, we've got you know, a little change there. Anyway, so this drag and drop stuff is useful and fun, and I really recommend it. And so in this case, again, we're doing this in Cuis Smalltalk, which you can see get at GitHub at Cuis Smalltalk. And I've got some added behaviors which are in my repository also in GitHub. And have fun. Happy morphing.